On this episode of Consumed, we're going to talk to a consumer who is the second fastest growing demographic in the United States of America of buyers and sellers today. And she's going to tell us all the deets on her buying and selling experience so you can get a better understanding of how you can best help consumers and what they need. This is Consumed, the podcast for real estate agents who are tired of hearing the same old industry stuff and want to experience something completely different. Incredibly excited for this week's episode of Consume because I have one of the most popular demographics of consumers currently on the market today. I'm sure she's popular too in general, but from a demographic standpoint, single women are the largest growing purchaser of real estate property of any demographic outside of 65 and over in the United States of America today. So big shout out to all of my single guys for sucking. Yes, we all know that men are terrible, and I have no problem saying that. So first, big thank you to Claire for being on the podcast today, because it's not always comfortable or easy to come on to something blind and really not know what you're getting yourself into. So I always appreciate that, but I don't like prepping people because I like the unfiltered thing. So Claire, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Lance. I appreciate it.
So without going into too much detail, little context on just sort of your background, job type stuff. Don't tell us exactly where you work because, agents will start hitting you up automatically with like, oh, if you decide to move, I'd love to help you.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I am an educator. And so I have worked in the education space, primarily higher education, for the past 15 years. Had a little bit of a detour for a couple years where I went and practiced law. And ironically or not, consumer protection was a big part of what I practiced in terms of areas of expertise. Um, and so did that for a little while and found my way back to higher ed, fortunately, which is part of what brought me to Connecticut. And so um, prior to this, I had lived for about 16 years in San Antonio, Texas, and uh, was kind of feeling ready for a change, was ready for being a little bit closer to family and friends. My family is predominantly in the Northeast, and so, um, I have to admit that I don't know if I would say second guessing, but the whole blizzard thing happening over the last few days is definitely making me pause a bit, but no regrets, no regrets. I'm very happy to be here. And so now I'm working in legal adjacent type work, at a university.
Amazing. And just if you don't mind me asking too, I think that for our listeners, one thing that would be incredibly helpful, you have also lived outside of the US for a period of time, correct?
I have, yeah, I lived for a couple years in South America.
Okay, and that's important because of the fact that you are not only incredibly well educated, obviously, in multiple backgrounds, but you also have some international exposure as well into what living abroad is like. So you actually have a really great perspective, I think, from many different areas in terms of living, housing, things like that, from a lot of different sets. But the consumer protection part, we're definitely going to talk about.
Right. Yeah,
Near and dear to my heart. So let's start right off the bat.
sure.
Um, I know you were in San Antonio, you said, and you got a job relocation opportunity.
Correct.
And let's start right from that element. You owned your home in San Antonio,
Correct.
and how did you go about finding a real estate agent in San Antonio when this all started? Like, what was the first thing that you did in terms of figuring out, like, okay, I got to sell this house. What do I do?
Yeah, the first thing I did was call the agent who sold it to me. I guess I had bought the house a little over 12 years before I was attempting to then put it on the market to relocate. Um, and had, every so often some exchanges with the realtor, nice guy. And so I reached out to him and originally was kind of just going to run with it because I was like, okay, this is easy. I know this person loosely, right? I was working within a timeline where I knew there was a strong likelihood that I would be already having to relocate while my house was on the market. So wanting somebody that, I trusted to be able to check in on the house and show it when I was nowhere to be seen kind of thing. Um, and then I started talking with some family and friends who have had experience in real estate, who were asking some really good probing questions just around commission rates and like, did you talk about this? And, is this something that has been a part of the conversation? And what are you thinking about that? And I was like, oh, I really haven't asked any of these questions. And was realizing that I think both that agent and I were like leaning into the fact that we had a pre-existing relationship, but
Mhm.
within the context of that, I was feeling like, I don't am I getting taken advantage of? And, full disclosure, when I bought my house, I was married, so that was, there was this sense of like, am I is this different now because I'm not married and I am now
Right.
single and trying to figure out, what's happening here? And so, I started just asking around a little bit to friends that in San Antonio who had recently sold, their homes,
Mhm.
and, at that point, I don't know what it was, but I was like, I think I would rather go with somebody who's a little bit more prepared, in terms of materials they provided. So, like, I got in touch with an agent who, put together this whole I'm not gonna use the right terminology here, I'm sure, but put together this whole, like, marketing book with comps and kind of, organized and just really professional feeling, and that impressed me, and so, I was like, "Okay, I think I'm gonna shift this," and I knew that the friend who had connected me to that agent a really positive and quick experience selling her home not too long before I was putting mine on the market, so that was helpful too. Yeah, so I mean, ultimately networking and, like, word of mouth and
Right.
trusted friends, but, certainly wasn't, like, the very first person that I went with.
If you don't mind me asking, because I think this is important to people that are listening, you mentioned that the first agent, the agent that sold you um, your home the first time, was the first call that you made because you'd had some interactions with them, and this was 12 years is a long time, right? What kind of interactions do you remember? Like, did you get a newsletter from them every month? Did you get or was it just a no? Okay.
No, it was like I don't even know originally what I know the more recent interactions I had with him
Yeah.
were because I had a friend who was looking to buy, and I was
Okay.
like, "Well, the only person I know is the person who sold me my house," so I put
Okay.
him in touch with her. But I feel like over the years, there was just kind of this, like, every and we're not talking frequent communication. We're talking, like, literally every couple years,
Mm.
like, but I'm also the person who, like, still has the number of the arborist that helped me one time remove a tree in my backyard in my phone, so I do not have I'm not very shy when it comes to cold calling people if necessary, so I was just like, "Alright, that's who I'll reach out to."
Okay. So this guy sells you a house over the course of 12 years, has almost no interaction with you whatsoever,
Minimal, yeah.
minimal, right? And you think of him to refer him to somebody else. I'm assuming because the general experience was positive when you went
Positive,
through the first time.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you refer this person to somebody else. Did they end up using him? Do you know?
No, they didn't end up purchasing, so
They didn't end up purchasing. Okay. But you've given this person a referral. So obviously that should make you more important. Um, and then you reach out in the idea of selling your own home now after you've recently given this person a referral,
yeah.
and their response was just sort of to kind of wing it and go through the motions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
So,
very personable,
sure.
very
Sure.
and I think that's probably one, it's part of the culture in South Texas is, like, a very relational culture, right? So there's a lot it's funny because San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the nation, but
Hmm.
feels like a small town. I mean, everybody kinda knows everybody. So, I think there's a lot of that, but, there was a much larger emphasis on, like, "Tell me how life's going. What have you been up to?" As opposed to, "Okay, let's talk about what you really need and want out of this sale."
Okay. So then just to transition it a little bit, we get into the next person. Now, this next person came from a referral from somebody else who had a good experience, a friend of yours. Okay. But this person shows up with, let's just call it what it is, a plan,
Mhm.
and was
Yeah.
very clear in the plan. and explained understanding what your house pricing was, explained what type of marketing was going to be involved in it, had a presentation for you, and they reviewed this process with you.
Correct.
Okay, because on Consumed, we talk a lot about the idea that something that agents don't recognize is that the word that I hear most often from consumers when I talk to them and what they're looking for in an agent is the word partnership. It's not
Mm,
like expert in my area or, it's really, they're looking for someone to act as a partner with them. And a partnership involves explanation of what's involved, right? Like, what can you expect? So, I find it super interesting because, again, you will see me smile gleefully for those of you that can't see my face as Claire is talking, as anytime we talk to a consumer, because I'm sort of like, and here we go. Like, so house gets on. What about commission? Did anybody talk to you about commission or compensation or how they get paid, or how did all that come to play?
yeah. So with the first person, no. I mean, they did in the sense that they were like, "This is the set rate.
Okay.
There's no negotiation."
Do you remember what it was?
6%,
They said 6%.
is what I would have, and then that agent was going to work out how to divvy that up between himself and the other agent.
Okay.
So
Got
I
it.
had no control over that, right? It
Okay.
was like, I'm paying 6%, period.
And to be clear, this was recent, meaning this was within the past year.
I mean, my house sold within the past 6
Past
months.
year. Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
So
yeah,
I'm saying that because agents listening to this right now and consumers, for any of them that know, are going to go, wait a second. That's after the NAR lawsuit settlement. So, okay. Continue.
yeah. So, which was part of some of the conversations and feedback I was getting from family and
Hmm.
friends were like, "Think about this," and, when I spoke with the agent I ended up going with, that agent explained, like, "Look, I have 2 options for you. Either we can go with the 6%, which is normal for our area, and it'll get split 3 and 3." And she was telling me up front it would be an even split. So not like she would have the control over that, but it would be 3-3 split.
Yep.
And she said, "Or you can choose not to list a commission for the buyer's agent, um, and you'll have a little bit more control." And we kinda talked through, like, pros and cons to that, especially in terms of, well, if you don't list what the commission is for the other agent, they might be less likely to wanna show it to their client. Ultimately, and keep in mind, like, in my practice law life, I did a lot of settlement negotiations. So there was a large part of me that was like, "No, I want control over this." Like,
Yeah.
I wanna be able to make a determination, and it's funny when you talk about partnership, like, yes, I appreciate that idea of partnership, but also I am somebody who in my life has been paid for my expertise, and I also want somebody that I can pay for their expertise, right?
Right.
Like,
Yep.
I know, okay, you have something that you're bringing to the table that I don't have, and I'm
Right.
trusting you with that.
Yep.
So I'm looking for a partner in the sense of you're listening and hearing me, but also I want you to give me advice. I want you to be able to tell me what you think is best here? Um, so yeah, so we talked about commission in that sense, and, to be perfectly frank with you, I don't mind saying I ended up paying the 6%, but the fact that I had the ability to control that and
Hmm.
determine that
Yep.
meant a lot to me.
So at any point, though, and again, this is not good, bad. It's not, we're not doing the Game of Thrones, like shame, on anybody. But at any point, did the agent explain to you the separation between compensation, meaning like my fee is X and you can do whatever you want to do on the other side is completely up to you, in a way that helped you better understand something that we talk a lot about, which is there is no real combined number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the second agent did, right? We
They
talked a
did.
lot about that, and
Okay.
there was a lot of space for me to ask questions and, kinda discuss, like, "Okay, I'm okay with your set amount, but then what does this look like?" And, having the room to say, "Well, when you go into the negotiation with the potential buyer, like, you can say, 'Well, I'm gonna, offer 2% of the commission and XYZ,' or, it's part of the total package that you're negotiating." And so we talked about that in that
Okay.
context. For
Good. Because again, I think it's important for people to understand that in the world of real estate today, consumers have the right. All compensation is negotiable, but particularly all buyer agent compensation is fully negotiable up to the point of an accepted offer.
Yeah.
And that's again, there are so many agents out there still practicing real estate today
Yeah.
who are, using terms like typical, customary, usual. Everybody here does X. We're going to expect this. Or, it's part of steering. If you don't offer this, they're not going to show your home. Or if you don't offer X, then, it's not, you're going to get less view. It's just, and it's not true, but it's,
Right.
again, to no fault of the agents, they've been indoctrinated in that for so many years now based on horrible practices by the industry on the whole, that that's what they come out with. So,
Yeah.
good to know. Okay, so we have this experience. You get it. Person comes. Um, I don't necessarily want to go into too much detail because all home sales have their own sort of caveats of like things that go on. But was there any sort of like one thing that stood out to you in the home sale process once you listed it that you're like, oh man, if I would have had it to do over again, I would have done X differently
On the selling side of
on the
things, right?
selling side? Yeah, just the selling side.
Yeah. I guess 2 things immediately come to mind. One, I'm glad that I went with the agent that I did go with, because what I didn't mention is that while that was a referral, I got 2 other referrals that I spoke with too,
Okay.
after I decided not to go with the first guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I ultimately spoke with 4 agents total, right?
Which is great, by the way.
I mean, it was a lot of work, but but it happened.
Yep.
Uh, but all of the other 3 agents were suggesting kind of a price range that felt a little low, but were telling me like, "Oh, this is general for the." We ended up selling my house for more than any of them wanted me to initially list it at.
Which is
Um,
great.
which is great, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of concessions and things, but that's fine. But ultimately, I was like, "Okay, if I had just gone with the first person and
Right.
not done some due diligence in terms of exploring this a bit, I would have gotten a lot less for my house," right? So, um, I think that was one big piece that, like, stood out to me was I'm glad that I listened to some of my family and friends and leaned
Yeah.
into that exploring. The other thing that I think stands out to me, how do I say this? I think there were some easy things that I could have done before listing it that would have helped make it move a little bit faster than it ultimately did, and that I ultimately ended up doing.
Like cosmetic things to the property. Okay.
Exactly. Like, easy facelift stuff that,
Mm-hmm.
like, I ended up doing. We, at one point, pulled it down for a couple days, did some of that facelift stuff and put it back on, and I think it made a huge difference, and there was a part of me that was like, "I had just done this at the beginning, maybe it would have made a difference," but
Was that recommended to you in the beginning?
it was one of the, like, "Here's something to think about." It
Okay.
wasn't like a, "You have to do this or it's never gonna sell," but
Okay.
this agent that I went with, I think, was really good about being like, "Here's things to consider, things to think about. It's gonna cost you a little bit of money. Do you wanna do
Right.
it? Like, do you wanna wait it out and see?" So, we did wait it out and see, and then I was ultimately like, "Okay, no, let's do that."
That's awesome.
So, yeah, so I think just considering some of those pieces that,
Mhm.
if I had thought about doing earlier. I mean, my home was on the market for about 3 months, which, from what I understand, in that particular demographic market, like, wasn't bad.
Right. But I'm sure it felt like an eternity to you
Felt like an eternity.
because if I'm not mistaken, you moved.
I was gonna say, yeah, because I moved, so, like, there's this whole sense of, like, I am over 2,000 miles away from this place, like, I'm trusting other people to keep an eye on it, but at the end of the day, I'm liable for anything that happens on that property this entire time period, right? It definitely felt like an eternity.
Wow. So, okay, incredibly stressful because you're selling to buy. You're actually, there's a lot of moving parts to that. So let's shift really quickly over to the buying side now.
Sure, yeah,
Okay, so you're in a new location. How did you find the agent that you decided to use up in this newer location?
a referral
A
from family.
referral.
Mhm.
Okay. So, referral from family, followed then by what was that experience like? Good, bad, indifferent?
My experience with the agent was great. Very, friendly doesn't really capture it well because, I mean, like, I think there's a lot of people who are friendly, but there's a different energy when it's like, you really feel like you have a relationship with this person, and in that sense, I didn't feel as I mean, I felt like a client in the sense of, like, let's think about these things, but I felt more like I was working with a friend through majority of the process, which was really nice.
That's actually really nice to hear. And I think that, do you feel like you were, because I talk to a lot of agents, and a lot of agents will hear that and they'll be like, I have to be BFFs with all of my people. And I'm like, well, that's a nice thing to have, but it's not necessarily the only component. Was there anything else besides just feeling like a genuine sense of trust and relationship to that person that you felt was helpful, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's combined in the sense of trust, but, like, this agent was very willing to say, like, "These are the things you need to be considering about this property," right? And we
Got
saw, like, a lot of properties,
it.
like, not an easy market right now,
Right.
and so I think especially, when we opened, you talked about being, like, a single woman, like, I think as somebody who's like, "Look, this is the first time in my life I'm doing this all on my own," and that's good, I'm really proud of that, I wanted to do that, right?
Hmm.
But I also was like, I need a sounding board. And so, tell me what you see, right? Like, be honest with me about what you think. I know you can't tell me what to do. I know you, but like, help me think through the points I really need to consider if this is a property I might potentially purchase.
And was there anything in terms of the buying process that you felt unprepared for or underprepared for, just in general?
Yes, I think I was not prepared for how long it would take,
Mm,
for sure. Especially because you have to remember, like, coming from a market where things were just sitting, there was so much inventory.
yeah.
Which was hard as a seller, right?
Right.
But now here, I mean, I remember there was one home I was looking at and it hit the market like December 23rd and it was already uh, contingent sold on like the 24th in the afternoon. And I was
Yeah.
like, "The heck? Like,
Yeah.
it's Christmas Eve. What do you mean?"
Oh, yeah,
It's
people don't
done.
play around here. It's
Gosh,
like-
so wild. So I think just the like lack of inventory and pace of things here, I was not fully prepared for, and I think also, uh and this is, like, a very niche, perhaps, aspect of homes in this area, I was not prepared for how many homes I would be finding that had solar panel systems,
oh,
which is a very, it's something that I have an odd knowledge set in, and, it I just taking that into account because there's so many extra pieces if a home has a solar panel system, right? Like, is it leased? Is it purchased? Is there a maintenance warranty on it? How
was
is
it
that
put on
tracking?
legally?
Don't even
That's the
start your
that's
legal
it. Yeah.
component of it. Like, how is it really reducing your electricity bills? You have the bills to evidence that it's reducing it. Like all of those pieces, um, as someone who was looking for a single family home. And at the time, I should say, while I was considering single family homes, I wasn't sold on it. I was like, I might go condo route, I might go single family home route. Like, I was really open. So I just wasn't prepared for, I guess, the type of inventory and the amount of inventory that would be on the market
Or lack thereof.
or lack thereof.
That's always really hard. And I think too, people are always surprised. You're doing this all within kind of a three month time frame, right? Of the sell buy element. And then you're looking at coming from a place where there's lots of inventory, going to a place where there isn't a lot of inventory. So you're catching the worst of both worlds on the sell side and the buy side, right? Which just has to elevate stress.
Oh,
And
immensely. Yeah.
it's, it is why we talk a lot about this on the podcast, is people forget that buying, selling a home and moving, those items are the third most stressful time of a human being's life, right behind death and job loss. So it's, it is really difficult to think about that entire process from soup to nuts. And then you have this individual as an agent, right, who is supposed to be your quote unquote partner and expert or guide in this process. It's like, if that person should be helping de-stress the situation for you, not increase the stress based on their lack of doing something or knowledge or all those other things. So really, really interesting. Now, congratulations, by the way, on purchasing a home.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Um, and I will even let you give a shameless plug to the agent that helped you on the buy side, because I think, look, if you had a great experience, heck yeah, we want to celebrate that. So if you want to say who you worked with, that's fine.
Yeah. No, Carrie Brayley with Susan Vanish Properties was my agent and phenomenal. Like, would recommend again in a heartbeat.
That's amazing. And so I'm I'm a big proponent of advice. I think that we always do best when we learn from other people that have had experiences. Those shared experiences make other people's lives better and more effective. So, what advice would you give to anyone that is currently thinking of selling? That's the first question, followed then by what advice would you give to anybody currently thinking of buying?
I think on the seller side, whether you're thinking of selling in the next like 6 months or 3 years, if there are things about your home that are kind of on your wish list that you think would elevate it and make you prouder to live in it, right? Don't wait on doing that all till the end, because I think that was the other thing when I ended up finally doing these things. I was like, "Man, if I had done this earlier, I would have enjoyed living here more in the last few years." You know what I mean? So, I think sometimes, or at least for me, it was one of those, I'll just wait and do it when it's gonna go on the market.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm sure, time-wise, there's some things that you wanna wait and do maybe so they look a little bit, more newly renovated kinda deal, but, um, I think if there are things that enhance the living experience for you, they're gonna enhance the living experience for the next person, and so, um, enjoy it while you can and you're in there too, right? Um, I think I think that's definitely something. Um, I think as far as probably have more on the buying. Although I will say, for what it's worth, both things were stressful. For me, it felt more stressful selling than buying.
Sure.
Um, and again, I'm sure that had to do with like not being there physically and all those pieces, but that was extremely stressful. Um, and so I guess within that, if you're in that sort of a circumstance, you really need somebody you can trust to say, like, please go by my house and just put an eye on it, walk
Yeah.
through, like, you know, dust off something if it needs to be, that kind of thing. Um, on the buying side of it, I had a lot of recommendations I received from people about like make your list of non-negotiables and rank them and all of those things. And that is super important. And I think it's super important to identify your likely, at least if you're working within a certain budget, not gonna find every single thing on your list. And so, it's one thing to think like, "Oh, I'm gonna rank these," and then it's another thing to say like, "And I really might not get this thing."
Yeah.
So for me, the concession ended up being location, like, in terms of distance from my work, and I was, like, pretty certain I didn't wanna be more than 10 to 15 minutes from my job. I'm 20 to 25 minutes from my job. you know, it was something that to get all the other things on my list, I had to make that concession, and I'm perfectly happy with making that choice. Uh, and I think it's worked out, but, it's like I said, it's one thing to theoretically think I'm gonna have to give up one of these things, and then it's another thing to actually have to give one of them up. So, preparing yourself for that, I think, can be really helpful.
Both of those are amazing pieces of advice. And just to touch on one part for each of them, on the seller side, you talked about the importance of doing certain things cosmetically to the property or things like that. For a lot of people, it's hard financially to come out of pocket for that kind of cash to be able to do that. There's some great programs out there, and I always recommend to agents if you don't have any experience with this type of stuff, we'll put a link in the chat too, so that people can after the show go back to the show notes and check it out. But there's great companies out there, like Notable is a really phenomenal one that I love. What they do is they work with the agent. So agents, if you're hearing this, find out how to create a relationship with Notable. It's awesome because what they do is they will issue you, really, it's like a credit card almost, that you have, that then you can make all the capital improvements that you need to make, and you only pay it back after closing. So it's just a really good way to be able to actually have something with no additional interest or any of that stuff, which is designed specifically for this purpose and process. So it's just like a great way of like, why would I come out for all this cash, right? If I can do something, have it improved, which we know increases the perception of value, and if not, oftentimes the value.
Yeah.
So that's a really good one, and I really recommend them. They're amazing. The other one that you mentioned is, as you said on the buyer side, I'm always impressed in how, as you said, people have this list of like 10 things I have to have in my home. And what's amazing to me is whenever I talk to a new buyer, I'm always like, okay, tell me what's important to you in the house. And you will hear this like same level of intensity from number 1 to like number 7,
Yeah.
right? Somehow the proximity to work is like really, really super, super important. And so is, open concept kitchen and I'm like, those are the kind of, okay, but you'll hear that. And then I always find with each passing month, and it always kind of makes me chuckle, the level of intensity for each one of those begins to diminish more and more until you end up with, look, if I'm somewhere within like half an hour and I don't have to use an outhouse outside, then we're good. Like I'm okay with it. Like, so it's always interesting to see how those things shift, right, into a lot of those parts and pieces. So I think those are two great pieces of advice. So before we wrap today, you are the closest thing to a subject matter expert that I'm going to get on consumer advocacy.
Yeah.
And it's a really big component of a lot of the things that I talk about, a lot of the stuff that I bring to the table with both agents and a lot of the work that I do with consumers. Many people don't know that I talk to consumers directly and help them prepare to get ready for the buying and selling process. So I work with people I don't buy and sell their homes with them or for them, right? What I do is I talk to consumers to help them get ready to understand, how do I prepare myself for this process? What does good look like? What should be realistic expectations? What is my home really worth within a range? So I can start to think about, is this the right time to sell? So I do a lot of that stuff, but a big component of it is also, how do I find the right agent? How do
Mhm.
I work with somebody that's not going to screw me over, or, you know, doesn't understand that compensation is split. You're not talking about it all, like 6%. Um, and in that process, I would love for people to hear from you, any insights you have in terms of your experience in consumer advocacy, to advice that you would give people in general when you think about the home buying and selling process, just from a consumer advocacy standpoint.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting, right? Because home ownership is one of the top indicators of generational wealth in our country. And so when you think about it that way, I my home is my biggest and primary asset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think about it as not just your home, but also your biggest investment, I think that's a really critical component. And I think it's important for consumers to have that in their frontward sphere, right? Not just like, "Oh, yeah, I kinda know that, but, like, I'm really focused on making it look pretty so I get" like, no, this is your investment, like, um, and you should want to get a reasonable price for it. But I think this is also on both ends of it, there's a difference between looking at a home transaction as, what's reasonable versus what do I want? People are always gonna want more than maybe what it's worth typically,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that's so I think having that in mind is really important, and I say this particularly on the buying side of things, right? Like, I made an offer that was lower than listing price on my home, and, most people around me were like, the market, it's crazy, like, go at least in on listing price, if not higher. And I was so glad that I followed my intuition because I got it for under asking. And like you just don't know. Like everybody's in different spaces. You don't know what's motivated that person to put it on the market. But at the end of the day, it is one of their biggest assets in life investment. So going lower maybe, but reasonably, right? I think that a reasonable standard is so critical. From a consumer advocacy perspective, this I will say till my last breath to anyone that will listen, like not even particularly related to home buying, but like check your credit reports regularly, right? Like, cause I think that idea of like, where am I positioned in terms of buying and selling, particularly buying, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do I have a good knowledge about kind of what the full package is? And I will say that on the selling end, I got wrapped up in that because the first buyer I had fell through because of finances. The second buyer made it through, but like skin of the teeth because of finances, right? So like you want to know what you're working with. I think the other thing is, like, I cannot emphasize enough transparency and, I don't know, honesty. I think good lawyers are honest is in my opinion, which is perhaps counter to some, ideas of the profession, but, I think, the way there's a way to be honest while still being a strong and zealous advocate. And so
Yeah.
if I'm thinking about an agent, right? Like I want an agent who's going to be honest with me and honest with the other person, right? I think about this in the context of like opposing counsel. Like I'm going to be honest with them.
Right.
I'm going to be judicious about what I share and when I share it, but I'm going to
Hmm.
be honest, right? So I think the same goes for agents. Like how
Hmm.
are you engaging in that back and forth? Because ultimately, like you are your client's advocate. Uh, and I think being able to identify how do I navigate these conversations that can be you have competing interests at times, right? So how do you navigate those in a way that's protecting your client, but also not like sabotaging the deal because you're just going in, wanting everything. So I think honesty, transparency, knowledge of what you're dealing with. And I think the other piece of it is honing the skill of listening to your gut, right? Like, I think on the buying end, there was one home that I was really excited about, and, like, there were some red flags, and I was kinda like, "Yeah, but I really like it," but thank God I listened to some of those red flags because and in complete transparency, my agent was warning me about some of the red flags too, so I was appreciative of that. Um, and ultimately, I think it was the right thing to not go with that property, but if the owners and sellers had been maybe a little bit more honest, I might have felt differently about it. But there was just not a ton of transparency in the process, and that hindered a lot. I'm probably opening a huge can of worms there, Lance, so I apologize if
No,
I like
you're not. I think again, this is fantastic because again, not everybody has your experience, your background, a law degree, right? Like there's a lot of elements here that a lot of people are highly trusting of this person, as you said, that's helping them with the largest financial asset most people own. And what I really appreciate about what you just said was that there's an element of honesty that needs to be hope, but it's not just transparency and honesty within the client relationship. It's transparency and honesty with, the other party as well. So I spent a lot of time talking about this, and it's one of the things that I tend to get in trouble for, which let's all be clear is there's a lot. But one of the things I get in trouble for is this idea that we talk about negotiations where agents run around talking, I'm a great negotiator. I'm the best negotiator. And I'm like, but that's not what people really want. What you
Mhm,
want is a phenomenal mediator. So when I
mhm,
talk to consumers, I'm always like, look, my number one job at that point in the relationship is to be an exceptional mediator. And here's why. Negotiations or a negotiator is who's involved in a hostage crisis. That's the person who has the sole discretion and autonomy to make any decision they want in order to end something.
mhm, mhm.
A mediator is the person whose job it is to relay information back and forth where everyone's going to win a little, but at the end of the day, the outcome is that we're all moving forward and where we've been successful in moving to the next step, right? And that to me is the most essential component. But that's where that honesty piece comes in that you talk about, because it is important that someone is doing that in an ethical and fair way. And, we hear all these things about agents talk about, I'm a trusted advisor. And I hate that. Sorry. I can't stand when I'm a trusted advisor. First of all, there's no consumer on the planet that if you went in the street and asked them, like, what do you think of your real estate agent? They're not going to be like, well, my agent is a trusted advisor who helps me with the third. Like, that's bullshit that, we tell
Yeah.
ourselves in the industry. What I think is the interesting part is that when you look, we're actually not that trusted. And that's an unfortunate part of what has been the industry on the whole for so many years. And I actually don't fault the agents for this. The agents are the victims of improper training, improper education, manipulation based on brokerages, NAR, the National Association of Realtors, all these groups that are like, wait a second, we make all our money off of these people.
Yeah.
So our job is to educate them in a way that keeps the funds rolling in, not to educate them in a way that's going to be consumer facing. And so all of that, not to just give a sermon on it, but is really important because when you as a consumer and the consumer standpoint that we look at today, if you want to improve the quality of a relationship, it starts with trust. And it's trust in not only what you're doing for that person, but trust in how you're going to operate with the other party as well to help that outcome be successful. And I think that's an incredible point that you made there because I don't think a lot of people think about that.
It's key. It's really key.
So as we wrap, I'm
Yeah.
going to give you 3 rapid fire questions.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right. So you keep your answers short. We're just going to hit 3 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Question number 1. Agents, useful or not useful in a real estate transaction?
It depends.
Good. Question number 2. Do you think if you had the opportunity to be more involved in the process yourself and have more available to you to understand that process, you would have been more likely to handle more parts of the process yourself, or would you rely on someone else to handle it for you?
Both and.
Give me more on that.
And I'm not trying to be coy. Like, I think I would have done more of the research and tried to figure out where it was appropriate for me to be more involved, while also acknowledging that because I have an agent who is somebody that I trust to be my advocate, I
Mm-hmm.
would need to step back in the places where it was appropriate for me to step back and them to lead.
Excellent. And 3, how much do you love talking to me right now? No, I'm just kidding. That's not a question. I'm not actually asking
Lots of fun. Lots of fun.
that. I'm kidding. Question number 3. You ready? If you had to do it all over again, would you?
Yeah.
So I asked that last question very importantly because to me, that's the number one litmus test as to whether or not your experience was strong enough that you would actually go through the process again in order to have the outcome, because that means the outcome was good enough. Whereas many people were like, oh, hell no, I'd never do that again. It means, well, what can we learn from that in order to change something to make sure that that experience for others is done differently?
I mean, I hope I won't have to do it again for a very long time. Let's be
Exactly.
clear. But,
Yeah.
like, especially for me with such a huge life transition, all things considered, yes, I would do it again.
I've heard a rumor that things are going pretty well, though, in that transition.
I cannot confirm nor deny, but I no, things are going well. Yes,
That's
things are
amazing. I just want to apologize on behalf of the Northeast and the great state of Connecticut for the weather, as we've, let's see, in the past month gotten 116 inches of snow.
I'm
Uh,
losing trust in people around here left and right. Everybody's like, "It's not been like this in a decade and a half." I'm like, "Okay, here we are."
Wait till you get to acorn molting season, which happens every 5 to 6 years, and that's even weirder. I'll fill you in afterwards on that one.
Yeah, thanks.
Claire, thank you so much. Cannot thank you enough for such insight, such honesty, and we really appreciate it. It's really great to be able to help a lot of people who will hear this, both on the consumer side, the agent side, to really understand parts and pieces of the process. And we really can't thank you enough for it. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Lance. I appreciate it.